And to begin with, everyone, my name is Paul Bowen. I'm a technical channel manager at Sumo in security. I began my career in IT about 25 years ago as a global security manager at Estee Lauder. And then I worked at ArcSight for almost 10 years, Securonix for a few years, Mandiant, and FortiSIM, doing SIM or cloud-based SIM for the last 15 to 20 years of my career. I'm here to walk you through Sumo's Cloud SIM today. And I'm going to turn off my camera now that I've introduced myself. And I'm going to get started. At any time, I have Jason here with me. You can pop questions into the chat and he will do his best to answer them. And if not, he'll post them to me and I'll take care of them. So today we're going to be talking about Cloud SIM with Sumo Logic, and we're going to do a Cloud SIM demo. So Sumo's Cloud SIM is a platform that offers a lot of advantages over an on-prem based SIM to manage your SOC. In fact, the Sumo Cloud SIM platform is part of the Sumo Cloud SOC. And some of the advantages that we offer are a rapid time to value with quick deployment out of the box because of our cloud native architecture. We don't have a large on-prem presence. And one of the many advantages of being a born and built in the cloud platform is where traditional SIMs have been ported from on-prem to in the cloud, Sumo only ever was in the cloud. So you have to, with many of the legacy cloud SIMs, you have to provision your entire infrastructure up front. With Sumo, you could decide to say, I only want to bring in 100 gigs of logs a day, depending on the size of your organization. And if for a couple of days you double, triple, 10x that, it's no problem. The infrastructure will automatically scale. And then at the end of that surge, let's say you're being attacked and that you've figured it out and you've mitigated the attack, the Sumo storage will again shrink back down to what you originally contracted for, and you won't have to pay to have 4 terabytes of storage every day. You'll just have to pay for the days when you had a lot of extra storage over a 30-day average. Our cloud native architecture gives us that scalability where we can scale up and scale down dynamically with no intervention from our engineers or your engineers. We give you a single collaborative platform, and that's for DevOps, SecOps, IT Ops, compliance, and also correlation. Sumo is a large-scale data lake, and the idea behind it is allowing you to put all your data in a single place with the redundancy and protection of the Amazon cloud. And then we modernize your SecOps workflow because we have a full workflow built into the Cloud SIM Enterprise that allows you to take tickets from inception or cradle to grave, and along the way adding insights and adding data into that to make it easier for you to repeat. Plus, with our powerful search engine, you could search a day, a week, a month, 3 months on a single IP or username and find out everything they did over that time frame. So it enables your SecOps operators to work much faster over longer periods of time. We also support all clouds. While we are built in Amazon, we will take G Suite and Azure data happily. We have correlation rules for both those platforms and, of course, AWS. And we have something called automated insights in our Cloud SIM Enterprise. Your traditional SIM gives you an alert. With Sumo Cloud SIM Enterprise, we give you an insight. And an insight, and I'm going to explain in detail when I go into the demo in just one more slide. An insight is based on something we call adaptive signal clustering algorithms that create entities and track them over weeks, not just a few hours. And we put all those alerts, which we call signals, together to create this insight once it hits an activity threshold. This means that it's like a tier 2 analyst is sitting behind a tier 1 analyst saying, you need to gather all this data to create your case. With us, we automatically gather all that data and generate them as insights, so your analyst can focus just on the insights. Now, as I said before, Sumo Logic Security Intelligence Solution is a platform. It's where you put all your data and where we cover all the different verticals that you would expect in a modern SOC. We have our audit and compliance in our Sumo. We also have cloud security monitoring and analytics, and each of these has a different area of expertise. We've added over 2 years ago a Cloud SIM component to add correlation and those next generation insights that we're going to examine today. And finally, we've introduced a cloud SOAR. So the idea is whether it's compliance, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's cloud, whether it's correlation, and whether it's remediation, you can take an incident from cradle to grave and actually take an action and track your remediation all in one single platform. And that's the idea behind Sumo. We're a modern SOC, we're a cloud-based SOC, and we have many attestations to prove our security in and out of the cloud. So I'm not going to go to the last slide because that's the slide that tells you how to get in touch with us. I'm going to switch over now and go right into the demonstration. So this demonstration is going to start with some of the Sumo dashboards that current Sumo users know and love. And if you've never used Sumo, you'll get to see a good introduction into the variety of data we offer and the variety of compliance options and security options that are built into the platform. Everything I'm going to show you today is pre-built content. So you don't have to build any of this yourself or hire expensive professional services to build it. The first is our Global Intelligence Service for Guard Duty. And this dashboard allows you to ascertain how your company is doing against Sumo's other thousands of companies in the cloud. And what we've done is we've taken it and shown you that compared to the rest of our customers, where your security posture sits. Now, this is anonymous. No one can see your data, you can't see their data, but we average this out for you. And if I were to look at this, my company versus the baseline of all of Sumo's other customers, I can see that as far as high severity alerts go, I'm very low. As far as medium severity alerts go, I'm slightly above average. And again, with low severity alerts, I'm slightly above average. And I actually get to see that most of them are recon, and then the rest are pretty low. So the idea behind this dashboard is to give you immediate situational awareness of your cloud. And this is a built-in dashboard. We also have a security insights dashboard, which is everything you'd expect to see in your traditional SIEM SOC dashboards. It shows you failed login counts, the sources that it's coming from, the outliers, how confident we are that things are malicious, where everything is happening in the globe. And again, I'm going to say this on each dashboard, they're built in, they're out of the box. You don't have to do anything special except give us the data for us to produce these analytics for you. Moving along to Kubernetes, we have a dashboard built again for Kubernetes where you can see the status of all your clusters, your namespaces, and your deployments. So the idea is with one quick glance, you can see the health of all your pods, all your namespaces, and all your clusters. And right out of the box, it's one of our hundreds of apps that comes with Sumo. There's no extra charge for these apps. You just click on them and install them into your Sumo SOC. Finally, before we go to the actual SOC component, I wanted to show you that we have a DevSecOps dashboard for your Jenkins and your NGINX and all the different types of threats that are out there. And again, you can monitor this any way you choose. If I scroll up, here's the Jenkins. I had it hidden. Sorry about that. But the idea is your average build duration, your log levels over time. Everything is here, your ELB requests by location, for you to quickly understand what's happening in your environment. And the idea behind all these dashboards is just to make it easy for you to do your job and to monitor your company. But we're here to talk about Cloud SIEM Enterprise, Sumo's correlation engine in the cloud. And this is our Cloud SIEM Enterprise dashboard. And what this dashboard does is it tells you your security on all your devices on your network. We start with our record count. And again, Sumo is a data lake, so all your raw logs go into the Sumo data lake. Once we get all those raw logs into the data lake, we go a process called normalization and enrichment. Just like a traditional SIEM, we enrich the data with geolocation and DNS and all the things you would expect. But we also add entropy rankings, dynamic DNS and DGA rankings for every website in your environment. At the same time, taking that unstructured data and structuring it so that it can go into the correlation engine's processing. And the idea is you come from tens of millions of records to hundreds of thousands of signals. Now, signals are when one of our 600 pre-built rules matches one of those normalized structured data schema records now. And the idea is when it triggers, it creates an entity. And an entity is key for us to generate the insights that you'll see next. And I want you to see that those insights are 108 over 7 days, but we'll go into detail how this happens. So when a signal is generated, an entity is created, which could be a username or a host name, or an IP address or a NAT address or a MAC address, or any field in our database can be construed as an entity. And we track that entity by default for 14 days and are looking for an activity score. To give you a practical example, I, Paul Bowen, log in on the 1st after being out for 3 weeks, and I forget my password 3 times. This triggers a correlation rule, giving me 2 points of activity on that threshold of 12. The next thing that happens is I remember my password. So now after 3 failed logins, another default rule says I got my password right on the 4th time, giving me 4 points of activity towards my 14-day entity window. And the entity window is adjustable, as is the threshold. Then on Wednesday, I click a phishing link. Now I get 4 more points of activity. And now over 3 days, I have 8 points of activity. On Friday, I actually download some malware, giving me another 3 points of activity. So now I'm up to 11 points of activity over 5 days. But before the malware does anything, I shut down my laptop and go home. I come in on Monday and my laptop starts to beacon, giving me another 3 points, giving me an activity threshold of now 14, which is above the default threshold of 12. And I generate an insight, which has, using our adaptive signal clustering, put firewall data, phishing tool data, OS log data, all into one insight for me. So when my analyst goes to that insight, they immediately have all the signals that were generated on that entity over the time period it took them to create the insight. And that's where we take that next step in our evolution. Your traditional SIEM generates tons of signals, in fact, too many signals. But with 108 insights over 7 days, that's barely 14 insights a day. And we're going to show you how an insight can be remediated under 30 minutes using our system. So one analyst could clear all the insights in one day. And instead of continuously falling behind, as is a SIEM's most prevalent problem, and becoming exhausted, another problem with SIEM, we eliminate analyst fatigue and we eliminate the eventuality where you need to hire more and more people just to catch up, not even keep up with the number of security alerts you're getting. So that's the top row of this dashboard. And then in the bottom here, we have the insight count. We're going to dig into an insight in a second. And then we have the rules that fired and the records or the raw logs that caused those rules to fire and the status. Unfortunately, we don't have any red insights, which means we don't have any high level insights, but I'm going to now drill down into an insight right from here. So I click on this insight. And now it takes me right into the Sumo dashboard. And just let me make this full screen. Oh, it was full screen. So I just want to point out a few things about this insight. It's got a name, and the name is derived from the signals that fired. And the signals that fired, like initial access and persistence, are added to the name. So you know on the MITRE ATT&CK framework exactly what this insight is all about. It's about persistence with initial access. If you know MITRE, you know that's fairly dangerous. And we have 5 signals involved. And on top of all the other enrichment, we add more enrichment. We have a server that can actually go out, and if you have a CrowdStrike account, it will pull the CrowdStrike data. It'll do an NS lookup. It'll do a username lookup and add all this information as enrichments right into the signal. Those are added enrichments. The default enrichments I'm going to go into in a second, and they're right here. So as we look down these signals, we see a vulnerability reported, and we have 0 severity rules that just fires so you know something happened. And it's all about the entity that got generated when the first rule fired. So we know that this entity has a vulnerability, so we just want you to be aware. Then we have tap, Proofpoint said there was a phishing email click for 4 points of activity. Then we have checkpoint threat emulation, and I'm going to drill into each of these signals in a second, for 3 points, giving me 7 points of activity. And as I scroll down, I get a threat intel hit for another 3, that's 10. And finally, CrowdStrike detection summary event for 5. So now I have 15 points, and that's why this insight was created, why it fired. Across the top, you get a history of when all of these took place. If this wasn't demo data, this would be spaced out over 14 days, but it is demo data. And this is what I call the 100-foot view. We're looking at the system from a very high level view, and we're able to now drill down into each of these. But just from this, you can get a feel of what the system did. It clustered together all of these different signals, all of these different MITRE ATT&CK tactics and techniques based on this entity. And now I'm going to drill into the proof point because that's the first one with any severity. And here we're at what I call the 10-foot view because we can still go deeper. But let's start right here. The first thing we want to do is, by gathering all those insights together, we eliminate the need for your analyst to log into all those systems. We eliminate the need for your analyst to have the credentials and know how to run the query. And we eliminate the need for your analyst to have the experience to know that they had to be gathered together in the first place. So right then and there, we're eliminating much of the work that investigations require. And if Ponemon says it's 2 hours to do an investigation, by eliminating 4 queries, constructing them, logging, and executing them, we've knocked at least 75 minutes off of that 2 hours. So now we're down to 45 minutes or less. And what we do after that is we tell your analysts what fields we think they should be focusing on with what we call favorite fields. So this is just our security analysts who've built the system telling your analysts where they need to focus. But let's drill down a little bit, and you can see the URL they clicked on. You can see the Alexa ranking of the website. You can see the entropy. And if you're familiar or not familiar with entropy, it's a very simple formula. It runs from 1 to 5. And the closer you get to 5, the more random the URL is and the more dangerous it becomes, or the higher the entropy is. And we get the URL entropy on the root domain. And we also get, is it dynamic DNS? No, we don't think so, but it is a fairly random URL. We also give you the ability to take context actions. What I mean by a context action is I could search the Sumo database and show me everybody who clicked on this URL today, for the last week, for the last 3 months, if I wanted to, right from inside the system. So we're still at what I would call now the 10-foot view. And this is where we add in even all the fields that we don't directly map. The ones with the stars can be added to favorite fields. And the idea is we tell you the vendor, we tell you it was a targeted attack protection, there was a click, the click was permitted, and we tell you that the threat was phishing. So right at the top, your analyst can look at this and say, okay, Proofpoint says this is a phishing exploit. Great. So I can say, maybe I want to get a little more view of the details. I can go and show all the data that we have. And if I'm someone like myself who likes to look at a raw log, I can click on the raw log, and it'll take the system a minute to come back with the raw log. But the idea is this is the floor, the deepest view you can get. And the idea is we have a ton of information for you to look at right here. So that's our first signal, and already we think maybe there's something we need to do. So I'm going to move on to the next signal. And in this next signal, we'll see that this is a checkpoint threat emulation. The rule is right here. The logic is right here. The entity is the same again. The tactic is here. It's listed. And when we get to here, we now can see that the destinations are there, the ingest source, the checkpoint threat cloud. It gives us the MD5 hash. It gives us the file name and the type of malware right here. And again, this is the 10-foot view, not the basement just yet. But one of the other things I could do is say, you know what, for a context action, does VirusTotal think this is a dangerous file? And the system will go out and execute a VirusTotal query, and it'll come back in a minute with the information from VirusTotal as to whether or not that's a dangerous file. And so we can just keep clicking through. And again, a lot more information than we need, but all the details are right here if you want to go even deeper. So you can just keep going deeper and deeper into the system. And let me see if VirusTotal, they're not being very friendly today. We'll try and refresh. There we go. So VirusTotal has said that the 40 of the 66 vendors flagged this file as malicious that they work with. So now that you know that your first 2 signals are legitimate. Proofpoint said it's a phishing, and the file that you downloaded, you've been told that it's malicious. So you get the file name again and the type and everything else. So then we could go one more signal further, or even 2 more signals further. And here we see that CrowdStrike has told us that this is a dangerous hash. And when we scroll down here again, it's the same file name, the same file hash. We get the lists that matched in CrowdStrike, and you can upload your own match lists for threat intel. And as we scroll down, we get all the information now, at least in my opinion, to start making a decision. This is the actual Trojan name that was in there. This is the antivirus engine that detected it first. This is where it was put. All the information you need to now make a decision. And if we go to the last signal as part of our decision-making process, we say, okay, still from CrowdStrike, there's just a lot more of the same data, but this is just a summary from CrowdStrike of everything. So at this point, I could say to myself, I'm fairly confident I want to take an action. And my action could be, well, I want to email it to myself. So I'm emailing it, and now it's going to show up in my inbox. But another action I can take is to say, maybe put it into one of the SOARs. And as I mentioned, Sumo has their own SOAR, and that'll be integrated into the system in the very near future, but this is a test system. Or you could put it into Teams or the Slack, PagerDuty, ServiceNow, and manage it that way. We also have a status. It's in progress. I'm going to move it to, maybe I can move it to closed if I wanted to. And I have to tell it why it was closed. It was resolved. And I'm going to automatically assign the insight to me because it's unassigned. So I'll put in an additional comment, close due to reworking of Suricata rules, whatever I want in here. And I close the insight. And now you see that it's been assigned to me. And I can update the tactics and techniques to active scanning or acquire infrastructure. And then I can put extra notes in here. So now if I go to the Sumo overview of my Cloud SIEM Enterprise dashboard, I come back here, and this is the heads up display. And you can launch it either from in here, like I did, or if your analyst wants to start in here, they can. And basically, these are the records and signals that we saw in the other dashboard and the insights. This is the mean time to detection, response, and remediation. This wavy form is the records, which were raw logs. These bars are the signals. And here, you'll see that as the insights are tracked, they can look at the triangles and see exactly what status the insights are in, or they can just look here and immediately get the situational awareness of where your dashboard is and everything you need. And I can just quickly click on one of my insights here. And now you see that we have a Kanban workboard that we can adjust these tiles to have different names if we want to use the built-in ticketing system in the Cloud SIEM. So I know I went through a lot of data quickly. I don't know, Jason, are there any questions? Is there anything that I didn't cover that you think I missed?
Yeah, no, that was awesome, Paul. Thanks so much for kind of running through the Cloud SIEM platform and talking through the specifics here. So there actually haven't been any Q&A that have come in. So I don't know if we can either just stay on mute for a few minutes, see if folks do have questions that come to them, or if you did have an additional sort of sidebar feature that you wanted to quickly show, that would also be an option. But we're coming up on time. We typically are keeping it to 25 minutes and then 5 minutes for Q&A. So we could just stay on mute and see if folks have questions, or as I said, if you want to show one more thing, we have a few minutes. But
yeah, I'll start showing something if questions come up. I always like to highlight the entities, because in the entities, you get to see some very interesting things. Like if I were to look for a specific is Rico dot. If I were to look at a specific entity, I can see for the last 13 months every signal related to that entity. And because this entity is an Active Directory user, we comb the Active Directory. Oh, that was a question. And we get all their group information. So let's take a look. I can't see the questions. Can you see them?
Yeah, I can see it. So I'll read it off to you, Paul. So the question from Gilberto Esparza is, the main SOC dashboard that was shown, is that a dashboard built on Sumo Core? That was the question.
Yes, this dashboard is built on Sumo Core and can be shared. It's just hasn't been put into an app yet, but it's absolutely shareable to any customer. It's built on Sumo Core and it's fed by the Cloud SIEM Enterprise's data.
Cool. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful in kind of clarifying the relationship basically between Sumo Logic Core Platform, which we covered in the previous session. So Gilberto, I don't know if you were on for that session, but there would be some dots that you can connect now from what our technical marketing manager, Scott Bauer, had just shown versus what you're seeing Paul showing. And then it's an interesting kind of feedback loop because, of course, Paul is also showing ways in which the Cloud SIEM data is sort of routed back into Sumo Core Platform as well.
Correct. And my contact information is down here. I encourage everybody to take the survey. let us know what I did well, what I didn't do well in here, if I missed something, if I went too quickly, or if I didn't go technical enough, or if it was educational, you can let us know that too. But again, you can contact sales or you can contact me directly if you have questions you didn't want to ask during the session, and I'll be happy to follow up.
Cool. And it looks like we had one more question come in from the chat. So are you able to see that one, Paul, or I could read it off to you if not?
I just have to end the slideshow. It's when it
Oh yeah,
ends, I should be.
if you want to keep it open, I can just read it out. Does that
Okay.
work? Cool. So the question from Adrian Chow is, what are the basic fundamental logs that need to be collected, or absolute minimal systems to have to protect their environment, your environment? So Proofpoint for email, firewall, Active Directory, server logs, endpoint logs. As a question, that's what Adrian was kind of curious about. So I mean, I can also feel that too, but Paul, do you want to chime in on kind of, I guess, what your
Sure.
top 3 or top 8 list, whichever makes the most sense?
Absolutely. So what I generally do is everything you covered is pretty much essential. I like to also get a network sensor going so that I have Bro-Zeek logs, but firewalls, OS logs, IDS logs, AV logs, and endpoint logs are really the key. If you're using a proxy, obviously you'll want the proxy logs, but what you would call your traditional perimeter defenses are first, and then your secondary internal defenses like a Bro-Zeek sensor, syslog from all your switches and routers, of course, but that is just all part of your network device traffic.